So in today's video, I want to talk about one of the most overlooked and yet easiest ways to handle objections with your customers. So if you fear that dreaded customer objection, this video is for you. Your ability to handle objections is arguably one of the most vital parts of any sales process. And the question I'm most often asked by the folks I'm coaching or members of my team is, what's the best way for me to handle that objection? Now, if you've been following along with some of my other videos, you'll know that having a great understanding of your losing, your fighting, and your winning zone is imperative to being able to shift the conversation away from their objections and into the zone where you're going to win. Now, a lot of folks hear that and they assume that's a reactive approach. But the secret to dealing with objections eloquently is getting in front of them in the first place. So what do I mean by that? Every time I'm in a conversation with a customer, as much as possible, I want to control the direction of that conversation. This way, I'm removing chance as much as possible. And I mean, if I can keep the customer focused where I want them, it's just going to make this whole process easier. But in reality, your customer is going to have objections. And we need to think about our objections as opportunities, not roadblocks. So let's talk about how we get in front of them. Now, the more and more you sell your product, your service, or your solution to a customer, the more you're going to begin building a repository of customer objections. The things you tend to hear over and over and over again. And like I said, a lot of sales reps take a reactive approach. If the customer doesn't raise the objection, take that as a win and move on with the conversation. But the problem with being reactive is there's a good chance the customer is still thinking of the objection. They just haven't told you. So now what happens is the call ends, the customer is subconsciously thinking of this objection, and you haven't been afforded the opportunity to address it. Now, I see this happen a lot where you fast forward a couple weeks, the deal has been lost, and when you talk to the customer, turns out they made a decision based on the objection they had that they never voiced. And this is where the excuses start. Well, the customer never said they were concerned about that. How was I supposed to know that was going to be a problem? Do yourself a favor, make life easy, and start getting in front of your objections. If you are a well-researched rep and you know the customer you're selling into, you should have a pretty good idea of the types of objections the customer is going to be thinking about. By bringing the objection forward early, you effectively disarm the objection before the customer has an opportunity to make any assumptions. By me proactively bringing up constraints or challenges with my product, I'm also building rapport and trust with the customer. I'm not trying to hide behind rose-colored glasses. I acknowledge that my product is not perfect. And there's a humility to that builds rapport and trust. The customer's not hearing accolade after accolade after accolade. They're seeing that you also understand there are constraints and limitations, but you've considered that and you're comfortable continuing the conversation. Anything that helps you build trust with your customer should be seen as beneficial. So if you're not doing this already, take the time to catalog your common customer objections and then map each of those objections to an area of focus in your winning zone. And hopefully through this, you can stop fearing objections and instead embrace them because they are wonderful for building trust and rapport.